All right, part four. This is your extremely brief tutorial. Um, I don't even know what to say. It's so straightforward. You really don't need this at all. I did make a tab, so just in case you feel like you don't know where certain notes are, you know. But I mean, you are playing one note at a time, right? I mean, you have the easiest part. It's the hardest to read, but with the tab, somehow I feel like that dynamic has shifted. Um, yeah, there's not much to say. So let's just talk about just the only thing I really want to talk about is the thumb stroke you're doing. So just like with the fingers, you have a free stroke where like when you pluck your finger, you know, it goes into free air, and to say that it does not, a rest stroke is a stroke like this, right? Like you start on the string, you pluck, and you end up touching or resting on the next string. And there's a free stroke, right, where you don't do that. Rest strokes, have very specific uses. When you're playing very fast. Sorry. It's not time for me to show off speed, especially when I haven't practiced. But my point is this: the thumb does the same thing. So the thumb free stroke looks like this. I do a circular motion. I teach a circular motion. I want you to avoid, you kind of go down and you kind of barely brush your first finger, right? The whole idea about the thumb is to not get in the way of the fingers. So free stroke would just be like this. Not the stroke we want here. Free strokes are really useful when you're playing arpeggios. They're sort of inoffensive, they're out of the way, they make sure that your fingers are able to move quickly, and they're not terribly hard to do. But they're not the strongest sound, okay? And to get the strongest sound, you want to do a rest stroke. So just like in a finger rest stroke, you end up resting on the next string. Your thumb does. You put this weight into the next string. Listen to the difference. Here's a free stroke. Here's a rest stroke. I mean, that's like 50% more volume, right? You can't always do that. You can't always go. You just don't have time to do that all the time. And you don't always want such a heavy bass sound. It's not always what you are desiring musically. So, but this is a great song to do it because there's less of part fours than anybody else, and therefore we need our part fours to come out very loud. So every note in this song can be a rest stroke. I mean, every single note. So rest stroke, 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 rest stroke. Let's see what it looks like. I'll often sort of move my thumb to mute certain. It's like I don't want especially when I get here, I don't want that D to ring out over it. So what I'll do is I'll go bum bum bum, hold it, and then I'll pluck this on beat 1, and I'll quickly kind of hop that string to mute the open ringing out D. And I'll do the same thing if I've got an open E that's ringing. Before I'll play the A, I'll go like I'll just kind of like, can you see that? Like I'll just kind of like raise my thumb just ever so slightly to stop the sound, because you don't want this sound where it's like, you don't want everything ringing over each other, especially in a bass part. I mean, your one job is to make this harmony stable and to make everything work. You can't have everything work if everything's ringing over each other. So I say it's straightforward, but there is some nuance here, and quite a bit, really. I'm sure bass players can tell you all about how muting things is kind of complicated. But the more we play, I mean, here's the thing: the more we play it, and the more you get confident with those rest strokes, the more it will bother you. It really will. It will bother you when you'll have notes ring over notes that sound bad, and you will kind of naturally figure out how to stop that sound. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. Maybe it will, but your brain will subconsciously be like, how do I stop that? And you will find yourself stopping notes, whether you are aware of it or not. The more you get into it, the more you will desire a more crisp and articulate sound, and you will not want everything running over everything else. So I know this wasn't much of anything except for a rest stroke introduction, and just introducing the idea that you may want to use parts of your thumb to mute certain strings that are ringing too much. I mean, that's all there is to say, really. You're in first position this whole time. The hardest thing for you is probably keeping up. Not keeping up as in just like making sure you know where we are in the song. You're looking at me, you're listening around you. All the things that are normally difficult about ensemble playing apply here. But because you don't play as many notes as other parts, it becomes easier to sort of get lost if you're not really listening, and where you are. And that's the good thing about not having as many notes, is it enables you to listen, and so you have an easier time keeping along. But when you're first starting out with the part and you feel a little bit uncomfortable, it's going to be very hard to listen and work this through at the same time. So again, the biggest thing you're going to need to do is be mindful of where you are in the piece. Be ready to jump back in. Be listening to where you're at and to where you should be. Anyway, if I can think about more, I'll make a follow-up video, but there's really not a whole lot to say about this part. So good luck. Do consider the rest stroke. Do consider things needing to be muted if they're ringing out and it sounds ugly. Just listen to yourself. If you think it sounds ugly, it probably does. If you think it sounds good, it probably does. I mean, you don't need me to tell you what sounds good and bad. I mean, you may not know how to make good sounds, but you probably know how to make bad sounds. Anyway, I'm rambling. So I will see you in class. Thank you for playing part 4. It's extremely important. Without part 4, we have no house. We have no foundation. We have no structure. We're just floating around here. Nothing, nowhere to keep us grounded, right? Anyway, thanks again, and I'll see you in class.